Yeah, and it seems like with Coach, I love this conversation. It seems like with Coach, one of the reasons why he keep emphasizing that he only can help people within reach, of course, is because of his word. Because he also because he knows how long that road is because he traveled it.
Right.
You know, that's what I'm learning hearing him talk today. And I know that there's a perception that, you know, Coach, you're an introvert, you don't talk a lot, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, looking back at it in hindsight, like even for me, like, you know, I was fortunate, I played pro football, things like that. When I hear younger folks talk, it's like, man, you have no idea how long that road is or what's required to do what you're talking about doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, Coach, is that a little bit part of why you weren't always the first to maybe speak or to assert yourself in situations or to correct things? You know, is that why you kind of maybe peel back a little bit and hide others to be more vocal for you?
Well, I think that for me, again, when I give my opinion or offer my 2 cents, I want to be sure that I'm at least somewhat informed. I don't want it to be an emotional reaction. I mean, that's okay too sometimes, but I don't want that to be a part of who I am. Or I was just emotional that day. No, I you know, it's funny, like in practice, in games, I didn't really yell a lot. And the reason I didn't yell a lot is because I want guys to listen. And I want guys to hear me. When my coach, and I told my college coach this, when you're yelling at me a lot, I may not be listening. Eventually, I'm gonna turn you out. I'm gonna turn you off. I'm not gonna listen. I said, and that's the way I thought. And so he learned not to do that to me. But in saying that, I don't want my players to turn, you know, not to listen to me. So I'm gonna speak to them in a respectful manner. And I can be assertive, but I don't have to be visual with it. I mean, you know, like I can say what I need to say and I can make a certain presentation, but I can still enforce. I mean, I remember, I'm sure we've had this. Sometimes my parents just, when you was a kid, they just kind of looked at you sideways when you're out in public.
Absolutely.
And you'd be like, oh, okay, I can't do this. Sorry, you know, you knew. And all I'm saying is that there's nonverbal skills that you can develop that your players will start to understand. But again, I want them to be able to listen to what I have to say. I want people to respect what I have to say. I want them to value my opinion. And because of that, I like to be a little bit thoughtful. And before I offer that, I like to have the information so that I can make at least in my mind, a solid decision. And so that's why, again, I make the presentation because I try to treat the players the way I wanted to be treated. And I wanted to be treated with respect. If you disrespect me, then we're going to have an issue. And my college coaches learned to do that. Like once, and if Troy ever did this to me, I'd probably choke him. But once when I was in college, we had a drill, and this is real old school. We had a drill, they roll the balls out and you're supposed to dive on the floor for the ball. And I'm like, I don't need to practice that. And I told my teammates, unfortunately, I made a mistake and was running off my mouth. So that was my mistake. Yeah. But I told them, I'm not doing that drill. Julius had done that drill 2 years earlier and broke his thumb. And so he was out for a period of time. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do a drill that's going to hurt. And so the day came. Coach got the ball, rolls the ball out, got to dive on the floor. So we got some guys that dive. Now it's my turn. Now everybody's looking at me. Okay, smarty, you know, what are you going to do? So he rolled the ball out. My teammate dove on the ball. I laid on top of him. Al, you got to go again. We just dove. I just dove. Okay, he did it again. So he did it again. I did the same thing. And so now I was like, no, you got to go again. Now I got attitude. So he rolled the ball out. What I did was sprint across, block the guy out, bent over, picked the ball up, as much as I hate to say this, tossed it at him rather aggressively right at his nose. Of course, as he catches it, I walk to the end of the line. Okay, well, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
I walk to the end of the line. He continues to drill for a couple of plays. Something else happens. And obviously he's pissed. So he can't coach now. He can't coach. I'm okay because I know that I'm not doing that drill and ain't making me a better basketball player. So he's screaming at the whole team. Obviously, I'm the reason. And so he's yelling at me as I'm walking out the gym. And he says, now Julius is in school. I'm a freshman. We have freshman teams. Julius is a junior. He said, you're never going to fill Julius's shoes. I turned around and said, Coach, yeah, I know. He wear 15s and I wear 13s. And I walked out and said, peace. After that, we were fine, okay? Yeah. But the thing is that, you know, like what I'm saying is I try not to put my players in a position that they're going to rebel unless I'm prepared to suffer the consequences. Now, believe me, I've done things that they didn't like. Right. And I'm willing to suffer those consequences. Like I've had guys show up late and they run around. I used to say, well, you run around till I get tired. You run around the court till I get tired. Now, if you want to walk out, if you walk out of here and quit, so be it, bye-bye. Yeah. You know, but that's the consequence I'm willing to deal with. And so that's what I understood at that moment. My college coach was trying to make a point that which was fine, that he's in control. You are, but I'm not doing that. Right. So my point in saying all of that is that, again, I try to do things and conduct myself in a manner that my players would appreciate, and I try not to put them in a position where they can disrespect me, because I don't disrespect them.
Yeah, that's so important, man. I know, Troy, just real quick, I just gotta say, that is so important, just looking back in hindsight too, just even in football, where it's a little bit more aggressive culture than basketball, you know, it's debatable, whatever, but you know, not putting your players in a position to rebel. So often coaches do that.
Right.
And it could really backfire. What I wanted to say, and it's a little bit of a controversial issue right now, but I think it's note to discuss, is most recent. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Izzo.
Yeah, the Izzo situation. Can you talk about that? Because when we was you know, players, that would be acceptable. But is an adjustment needed in that situation?
And see, first of all, I disagree with you that it was acceptable even when you played it, even when I played.
Okay.
I'm not saying it wasn't done.
Right.
But it wasn't acceptable. And again, don't embarrass me. That's embarrassing. Yeah. You know, and again, it goes back to me, that's a, you know, like, yeah, you can yell at me. Believe me, I got yelled at. I'm not saying I got, you know, but if you want to yell, say whatever you want to in the locker room, the privacy amongst our team and whatever. If it's on the bench, okay, fine. I can deal with that. But if I think you're putting me in a position that you're embarrassing me, then now we're talking about something totally different. This has nothing to do with basketball. This is me as a person. Yeah. And I'm not, and I don't handle disrespect well. I've done some stupid things in my life in response to someone that I consider was disrespecting me. So I'm very conscious of that. So when Izzo walked up on that young man on the floor, I'm not sure if it could have waited. I'm not sure what the situation was, but once he walked away from him, he should have waited until he was off camera to say what he had to say. For him to pull on his jersey, you put him in a position that, you know, can impact his reputation. Who knows how he's going to respond? I had a friend of mine, Brendan Malone, did something very similar to Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas turned around and choked him.
Wow.
You know, like there's a time and place for that, especially if you're going to if you got a lot to say and you're angry. Like, you know, I got to be able to, as a coach, temper myself so that I can do it at the right time, not doing it, you know, that's right there at the moment. You know, we need to have some privacy. I don't need to show everyone that I'm in control. I know I'm in control. And so I don't need to demonstrate that. So it was unfortunate for both people involved. That's the way I feel about it. I feel, you know, but, you know, Tom Todd, you know, that's him, that's his style. Right. But, you know, at that moment, obviously you got to know your people that you're talking to. And that young man was not being receptive. And that's unfortunate for both of them.
Hey, Burke, one thing I was going to say is that I can only remember like a handful of times where coach actually like really yelled at us. Um, but because of the way he carried himself, if he did yell, everybody listened. And I think that's why you shouldn't yell all the time. Like he said, if you do something like that all the time, anyone's going to tune you out. Even your child will tune you out eventually. You know what I mean? So I feel like you gotta pick and choose your times. You gotta make. I remember one time, Coach, my sophomore year, we were playing St. John's at home, and we just weren't playing the way we were supposed to play. I think St. John's was up maybe about 10, something like that. I can't remember, but it should have at least been tied, or maybe we should have been up if we'd have been playing the way we had been playing the whole year. And he came in the locker room and he basically just told us like, we're missing an opportunity because that was the game that was going to give us the conference championship. And he said that we're blowing it. Like, obviously he said it in a more aggressive manner, but he said it. But that was one of the few times where he yelled, I think, that whole season about anything other than maybe something at practice. But so I think we went from being down 10 to, I think by about maybe like after about 12 minutes of play, I think we might've been up 4 or 5. But it was not only because, of course, we wanted to do better, but also too, we understood like, hey man, our coach is telling us like we're really blowing an opportunity. Now, we knew what the game meant, but I think we just came out kind of flat. But I think it's just because of the way he was that, him actually yelling at us after we had performed so well and kind of met all the challenges all year. We knew what the game. I don't know why we came out flat, but we responded immediately just because of the way he conducted himself. And so when he yelled at that moment, it meant something to us. Like, we knew we wanted to win before the game, but that's not his personality to just always go crazy. So when he kind of went crazy, it woke everybody up. And I'm not saying we didn't want to win. We wanted to win. St. John's wasn't a bad team. They came out and were playing better than they were typically playing. But because of his reaction to the situation, it made us really, really turn it up. And the other thing I was going to say too is that, and I appreciated this as I went on in my career, was he never made us do pointless drills. Like he said, that drill that they had going to get a loose ball, like that's an easy drill to hurt you, to break a wrist, break a finger, break a thumb, get stitches. That's an easy drill for stitches. I remember one time I was overseas, man, they had us doing the football drill where you lay on your back and I'm serious, man. And you get up, and I don't remember if we had to race or if we had to play one-on-one in the middle. But I'm thinking to myself, at what point in the game am I going to be on my back and I got to get up, race a dude? You know what I mean? So there are a lot of coaches that do a lot of pointless stuff that you find yourself having to do. And that's another thing you appreciate, because when you play for an ex-player, they just understand. Well, number one, they understand rest. You work hard, but also too, our bodies may need some rest because the game, no one's paying to see us practice. The game it's the game that people are paying to see. I've had coaches that work you so hard at practice that you're thinking, you start to think to yourself like, maybe I'm getting paid only to practice. Maybe it doesn't matter if we go out and win the game. You know what I mean? So it just his understanding of the game from being a player also too was something I grew to appreciate. Because in college I can't think of one pointless drill we did. Not one.
Yeah, I just got a couple more, then I want to close this out, man. But I'll be remiss if I didn't say, Coach, man, this has been pure joy, man. We got to do this again another time. But I love how you emphasize what you really pay attention to your players, not about what they accomplish on the court, but in life. And I know life is a perpetual editing job. And can you just talk to some of the younger players who don't really grasp that it's a business once you get to the collegiate level, and they think that their skill set, they don't understand that it's because of their skill set, because like you said earlier, that their winning game is the reason why you get all this attention, because you are as great as you are is the reason why people are prioritizing you. that people are appreciating you, give you this type of attention. But the minute you stop scoring, the minute the lights go out, now the real game begins, called life. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between transactional relationships versus personal relationships?
Well, see, that's what a lot of young people are going to miss today because of this transfer portal. A lot of young people are transferring, and so there's no commitment. It's just like players that get paid by whomever, alumni or whatever. They take the money. To me, there's an issue with that. Only because now, once you do that, is there any real commitment to you from that particular school?
Right.
Like right now, people talk about Troy and Kenny Harley and Yuka Agbai and all those guys at Ryan, even though because he was part of that group. But there's a commitment there, an emotional commitment, because they paid to see him play, they watched him play, they graduated. That's extremely important. One of the things that's why your reputation is so important. That's why you're there. At the very least that you should get from a university is a degree. What things that are additional to that are building relationships, having an understanding of future employment, because that's what education is for. That needs to be explored. Like a lot of alumni at BC, particularly when I first got there, Coach, what can we do to help you? What can you do to help me? Well, if you really want to help me, when I pick up the phone at the end of my year of one of my players' careers and say, hey, they need a head start somewhere, can you give him an interview, a job, or whatever to get him started? That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want. To be honest, I'd lacked that at UMass. I was at that time as probably the second most successful basketball player that had played at UMass. And when my career was over, I called back up to school. I'm think I'm gonna get out in the real world, looking for some help. No real assistance. Extremely, extremely disappointed from that. So I always wanted to be sure that wherever I coach, whatever I do, that I always had access to individuals that were willing to help my players. But in saying that, they had to do their part. Yeah. They had to maintain a good reputation. They had to maintain, you got to be able to graduate. And that's what I'm saying when I say that once I give my word for someone, this is an investment that I'm making in you. This is the response that I want from you so that I can move you forward into helping you, again, establish your foundation for what the future is going to be. And now once I do that, my job is done. As far as I'm concerned, hopefully you will have some fruits from your labor. And at the end of the day, it's building a foundation, trying to create some situations that you can be successful in. And I emphasize that on a regular basis. I talk about it in the recruiting process. I talk about it because I was second most successful player at UMass as far as basketball is concerned at that time. And for them not to be able to assist me, should I have expected it? I don't know, but I did.
Right.
Because of the amount of success that I had there, not only me personally, but the exposure that I gave the university because we went to postseason.
And the money.
Because we got
you made them. Let's talk in the money.
But that. I don't look at it in terms of dollars and cents. I look at it in terms of exposure, okay. Because it's influence. That influence is so much as important as money is. Right. I'd like to be able to have some influence, and so that's what. And I took on that responsibility when I became a head coach. Mm-hmm. That I wanted to be a sounding board for my guys and help them as best I could. And if I couldn't do it, then I should hopefully know someone that could help them or assist them moving forward.
I'm gonna let you talk, Troy, but I gotta get this off my chest. BC was out of their mind letting you go. Out of their mind. Why? I don't understand that they didn't take time to sit down and talk and look at all of these lush gems just coming out. Look at you, you're such a valuable resource for so many of the young youth coming up that need to hear this, and they're just out of their mind. They're absolutely out of their mind.
Well, when you again, it has to do with values. When an individual has different values than you, then it makes it hard to agree. My values were about my players and getting them prepared for what the future held, and making sure that they had the best possible environment that I could give them. But when your values, when you have other values or there are other priorities, then you don't agree, and then you make changes based on what you think. To this day, I still don't know what the reason was, but again, the decision was made, and I just assumed that we just had different values.
It was funny too, because I remember I can't remember who called me back in the day, but I remember some people called and were asking me like weird questions about Coach, like, does he this and that? And I'm like, and I just remember saying no to everything they asked. I can't remember what exactly they asked, but it was basically questions just like, I guess, trying to get some evidence to confirm maybe, why to let him go or whatever. But everything I remember, I can't remember who it was, and I can't remember what exactly they asked. I just remember thinking to myself like, and telling them like, no, that's not true, that's wrong, that never happened. What are you talking about?
I was floored. I'll be frank. I was floored when I read it. I read about it, and I remember one of the things was like, oh, he's lazy. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. And I just was looking at the paper. I'm looking at the paper like, what the hell are they talking about? Who are they talking about? And I just remember, just being disgusted and disturbed about the manner in which they did it. It was like they did it at night when nobody was looking to watch it, and then you find out the next morning that this thing happened, and like everybody said, nobody knows why. But at the end of the day, I just want to say thank you for the time. Man, I love the fact you love ball like I love ball. And honestly, man, I just was tickled looking at the way, you talk about Troy and the rest of your players. And I love the fact that you named them. I love the fact that you gave your honest assessment about your time with them. And I love the fact that you talked about how proud you are. Here it is 15, 10, 20 years later, however that timeline is for said player, that you're proud about them starting their family. You're proud that they're gainfully employed. You're proud that, that they're productive citizens, and, they're not squandering somewhere. And I would like to think that it was, even the ones that weren't necessarily in your reach, but just your example as a man, being and doing man stuff silently, not like you said, non-verbal, doesn't always have to be verbalized. I just have one final question, but before I do, Troy, is anything you want to say or ask Coach before? I'm gonna bring up George Mumford. That's the final question that I had on my list, but just let me know.
Yeah, George was my college roommate.
Really? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. George had his own celebrity status at the time because he was Julius's roommate before me, and then I was his roommate. So he was the roommate of the stars. I mean, so we always kind of laughed about that.
Yeah.
But to be honest, we had lost contact for a little while, and we just happened to be on a flight. I don't know where we were going, but he happened to be on the flight. Hey, George, what's up? How you doing? And we're talking. He's telling me he's working with Phil in Chicago, doing this thing. And I'm sitting there, and again, my being who I am, I'm like, and he's trying to tell me what he does and how it works and the whole bit. And I'm real happy for him. And I'm like, and I tell him this all the time. I said, man, I don't believe in that stuff. It's a little more aggressive than that. He says, no, Al, I know you. I said, but this is what I'm doing, and I'm working it, with Michael and Scotty and Phil, and we're da-da-da. I'm like, okay, great, man. I said, let's stay in touch. Yeah. And man, we were having such a terrible year. Troy's freshman year, I was like, yo, man, I want to do anything to get this thing right. Get on the phone, hey George, man, why don't you come by and talk to my guys? Because I'm at wit's end. Because I'm not upset that we're losing. But I don't want to lose. And if I can do something to help them get better, now I'm getting outside of my box. And so George, yeah, I'll come by. And so he starts, so he's trying to explain. I said, you know what? Just do it. I'll observe. So we go through it. He starts working with him, and he gives him some, psychological tests, and he starts talking to him, and boom, boom, boom. And your boy Troy, he ain't listening. He ain't paying attention to none of this, but that's fine. That's fine. But that being said, at the end of the season, though, we started to win a little bit because we beat West Virginia, we beat Notre Dame. We should have beat Pittsburgh, but we didn't. But that being said, so all of a sudden, I'm like, there may be something to this. And so we continue to work with him. And he becomes part of the team fabric. And then, like I said, you don't have to utilize everything that he offers, but there's some things that are there. And I thought Troy's senior year, he started to utilize some of the skills that George is talking about. And I tell people this all the time. Troy took his game to another level, to the point that I almost couldn't coach him, because I'm saying no, 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 and he's going yes, yes, yes. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to leave this alone, because he's like blowing it up. Now I got hands off. I'm trying to coach everybody else, but just playing some of the best basketball for me of his college career. Just outstanding. Obviously became player of the year that year in the Big East. And so I'm like saying to myself, this is awesome. And so George was part of my coaching staff and what we did. He became part of what we were doing. And he was very approachable. And I never, in all my years that he worked with me, ever asked him what conversations he had with my players. I didn't, so you got to have a tremendous amount of confidence in that individual. I'm talking about me as a coach, to hand my guys over to him, to allow him to have this type of intimate relationship. And he didn't dominate it. He didn't overstep his bounds. He was very helpful. He's traveled with us. And like I said, it was just, he was extremely important to our success, to the point that, he was part of my staff, part of what we were doing. And he was, well, like I said, he was working with the Bulls. Later on, he was working with the Lakers, and he took time to work took time to work with us at BC. And then he wrote his book, and now he's like an expert in this area. And it always makes me chuckle, because I hear people talk and they're like, well, this mindfulness thing, and well, George Mumford, and I'll be like, get the hell out of here. Actually, a little more aggressive than that, but that's where he is. He said now he talks to people all over the world. I called him once. He was in some foreign country. I was like, yo, man. He's like, yeah, business is good. People want to hear it. And he's got his little podcast going now, and we stay in touch. But when he was writing his book, I was out of work at the time. So we sat down and did a lot of talking about, about what he presented to the players. But Troy could talk to him more on the player side. Like I said, I did not ever intrude. I had no idea what the conversations were. I gave him the freedom to do that. And for me to do that, I had like everyone else on my staff and my players, had a tremendous amount of trust in him.
Yeah, what's funny is, Coach, I didn't even know that you weren't on board with it like that, because I assumed that, you guys going to school, that maybe, I don't know, like maybe you knew something about it, or but one thing I knew though, Burke, is that anybody the coach brings in, I know that he's serious about it. So even though I didn't know the background, and the coach wasn't really, wasn't something that he implemented into his life, I just knew that he wouldn't bring somebody around unless they were legit. So just based on coach bringing them there, I'm like, oh, I'm in. You know what I mean? Like he could have brought in anybody. Just that's just the respect that I have for coach. But I remember we were first doing exercises and not everybody was on board. Everybody was semi-respectful. But I always think about like, George, a black guy doing kind of like some Tai Chi stuff, it's kind of weird, back then things were different. Like we were,
Yeah.
now the world is
it's
sensitive. You know what
different.
I mean? Yeah, now the world is sensitive to everything. But back then, nobody was sensitive to nothing. So you got this little chubby black dude, kicking and moving the air. Some of my teammates are like, man, look at this clown. You know what I mean? Like not on the low.
Yeah.
But for me, even I'm not gonna say I didn't chuckle a little bit in the beginning, but at the end of the day, I'm like, if coach brought him in, there's something valuable here. So I just tried to start implementing some of the things that he was talking about. And even though I didn't know mindfulness by definition, I think I always kind of imagined certain outcomes that I was interested in trying to make happen or manifest. So a lot of the things that he was saying just kind of made sense. And I remember when I first started meditating, because George meditates with nothing around, but for me, I needed to meditate with music because I needed to block out the dorm room. I needed to block out my roommates. I needed to block out things in the hallway, whatever. So I just took what he said and kind of made it my own thing. And I just kept working on it. And I just kept getting better. Like anything else you practice, you just keep getting better and better at it. But I think one of the most important things for me was just learning how to like just turn down all the outside distractions, not only in your life, but also in the arena, and just focus on, what you're trying to do. And it's crazy because like I say, man, if you take away Ryan breaking his jaw and you take away that knee thing my junior year, I don't even have a senior year. I know that for sure. But with everything that happened and the challenges that were presented, that mindfulness helped me really play through the discomfort that I had, just kind of in my knees from time to time with the lack of cartilage here and there, and also too. My senior year, we kind of got off to a bad start, and I don't think we should have. It's just what happened, and it helped me just kind of, I don't know, just make small tweaks, maybe just in my outlook that really just helped me maximize my output. Because I feel like even though we didn't have a whole lot of experience, we still had a lot of talent. Craig was killing. Bird was more than capable. Ryan was doing his thing from time to time. AB was doing his thing. Yuka, no, Yuka had the
Yuka's going.
Yeah, broke his neck. But we still had more than. I mean, we still split with UConn for the conference. So
Right.
Even though we went through a lot of things and things were kind of up and down, we still had success. So George, and I'm sure George helped some of the other guys too. It's just I don't know if they were as vocal as I was, or maybe they just didn't take it as far as I did. But I just think, and including George too, the coaching staff, the community that Coach Skinner built, and speaking on him even leaving, I feel like he had done so much and built such a solid cocoon around the program and the situation that when they kind of pulled the rug out from under him, I just think everyone was confused. And the other thing too that I don't think people realize, or maybe they just didn't care, was that sometimes when you run the flex, even though it's simple, it's complex. And so when you get new guys into the flex, you got to give guys a little bit of time to just kind of figure out what's going on exactly, even though it's not super complicated. Like when you look at it, there's a lot of ins and outs to it, and as you play it longer, like I think about when I haven't watched in a while, but I uploaded a bunch of our videos, our games from back in the day to YouTube. And like when you watch the flex, especially like my sophomore year when we had all the experienced guys, Harley and X and Kimbone, like if they tried to cut us up, everyone except for Duke, because Duke was one of the only teams that could switch every position. They were different, but everybody else, we were able to have success because even though we were running that tight box, everyone knew all the passes. So it's really hard to stop. And then with those hard screens people are setting, a lot of guys don't want to get screened that hard.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of guys don't want to get hit like that.
Even coach didn't want to get hit by the screen.
Yeah, he didn't. Oh, and it's funny too, speaking on that, and because I was thinking when you were saying that, I'm the same way as you because even though like I can run off screens and all that, I would much rather guard someone who wants to dribble because it's way easier.
Right.
It's way easier. When you got to chase a guy who's comfortable with running around all those screens, even though I was cool with running around screens, it's terrible chasing guys around all those screens. And they can really run off them too, those staggers, and then you got the big guy that doesn't help. Oh man, that is a nightmare. That is a nightmare. Not to get off whatever, but yeah, man, that the flex was it was really tricky to play on defense when you had guys that knew how to make those passes.
Well, in closing,
the thing about George and talking, it's really hard. Like Troy had a hard time explaining, and you can't explain it, and so it's hard to put it in a definition what it is that he is able to accomplish, because it's really of an evolution. I mean, you just kind of all of a sudden one day you got this, you got this focus and you don't really realize it, but it's like any exercise that you do, you just repeat it, and you just grow slowly. It's just like growing up as a kid. If you don't measure it, all of a sudden you look around, you're like, oh wow, I'm 6 feet tall. If you don't measure it every year, because the growth process is a slow process, and the same thing it is with this mindfulness, is that it's a slow process. It's not something you can do briefly, and it's something that you have to practice on a regular basis. And and the guys are willing to do it.
It takes a lifetime. Go ahead,
and Burke, and I did that too, and I did that like before every single game my whole college career, and sometimes after practice you do it, because what I found about this too, Coach, is and not every time, because sometimes you got work to do. It is what it is, just school stuff. But if you have time to do the mindfulness exercises after practice, it's almost like you had a practice and a half, and you feel it though. Like you can actually feel some type of weird progression. It's weird, but it's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you got extra reps in, and you feel the extra reps. You know what I mean? Like within you. It's crazy, but it's real.
No, it's like it's strengthening your emotional. There's IQ, then there's EQ.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he taps into, and he helps you with your manifestation, with having positive inner dialogues and making sure that relationship is kind and not being so hard on yourself. And like Troy said, and you as well, Coach, about the repetition and about like it's like anything, it takes time to get the results that you wanted initially. And I think he does an outstanding job. I was on one of his webinars this past week, and I read his book, tremendous book, and highly recommend that. But in closing, so you wasn't able to beat Dr. J one-on-one. That was you just couldn't get him, right?
Couldn't get him. Right?
Hey, Coach, I know where this is going. Coach.
Can I wrap this up, T-Bell? Troy Bell, he's the greatest ball player I had the privilege of playing against, right? And Troy Bell had the privilege of playing against the best that ever did it, Michael Jordan. Did you know he beat Michael Jordan, Coach?
I did know that.
Okay, so if you know he beat Michael Jordan, I'm just curious, before we close and turn off this camera, did you know I beat Troy Bell? I beat him one day. Coach, hey, Coach, real quick, I gotta get this off. Hey, Coach, you missed out on me, man. You could have recruited me when you was at URI, right? Well, I beat arguably the greatest recruit you ever recruited one-on-one. Did you know that?
I know it now.
You know it now. Hey, it was funny too, man. We were running out there for the jersey retirement. Yo, Burke told me that about 50 times, yo. About a day and a half, yo. And everybody else, it was too funny, man. But no, he did. We used to play one-on-one in the summer. Was it summertime, Burke, or was it summertime?
Yeah, it was a summer. We played 13 times. He beat me 12 times, Coach.
But see, that's my point. You can't. That's what I'm saying. You can't let him win not one time. For that reason.
I think I won, Coach, like that 9th or 10th time or something like that. I was trying not to ever play him again, but he was like, nah, we got to run it back. We got to run it back.
No, I knew, but it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah, I
You
know.
got him.
Yeah,
It's too late. It's too late.
Nah,
Hey,
it's
but
so
so-
he's gonna have to live with.
Burke had a cool little game though, man. He had a nice mid range and all that. You know what I mean? Like he was strong. Yeah, I mean it was a game, man. Burke had a little game.
Yeah, I always tease him about that, man. Troy know I got nothing but love and respect for him, and he is definitely the greatest play I've ever seen, and the greatest jump shot I've ever seen and stuff like that, man. And so to be able, here we are in 2021, and I left in 02, 03. We both left together, or actually 03 together, and here it is 18 years later. And we up here doing this podcast, and him and I are able to share private talks together and stuff like that. And just for me, to see you two talk today is the reason why I thank God that he put this vision in my mind 3-4 years ago to provide this type of platform, man, because the joy, the love that was exchanged today, man, it's gonna be a great day, man. So I want to thank Coach. I want to thank you, Steve Bell. I love you, man. Thank you for taking the time. And that's the bottom line, man. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time.
All right.
Be kind to yourself and enjoy your day.
All right.
Talk to you later, fellas.
Everybody be safe.
From that stoop down to Lenox, my mama argued with me for like 200 minutes, drinking brews till I'm finished. To the news, them interviews, they knew my position. I could lie for free, but that truth is expensive. So visit my site, yo, get an insight. What my living was like was bigger than life. Different women spending the night, no children in sight. I got fed up, but kept my head up like I'm willing to bite. My life doing bike tricks, touchdowns for Mike Vick. Stop on a dime and split right soon as your eye twitch. I was quite quick, not many was like this, waxing them like a candle. I guess I was quite lit. I heard they mad, I deserve to brag. I'm in my bottom line Birkin bag, and I ain't trying to waste a whole lot of time with this rhyme. But after this, we getting straight to the bottom line.